Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire on SportsGrid. Today is Monday as we begin the week of shows with a lot to get to on today's program. We got breaking news from the NFL, a little bit, of course, from Major League Baseball as well. It's that time of the year. March Madness is almost upon us. We'll recap some of the things that happened over the weekend in college hoops. Matthew Waters is with us from Legal Sports Report as we get ready to launch sports betting in North Carolina, less than a week away from that. In addition, of course, we have guest contributors from the Sporting News. In addition to that, we've got a guest contributor covering the New York Mets. It's Tim Healey. My old buddy's going to join us here on the show. We'll go over everything happening with the Mets in Port St. Lucie in Florida. But we begin on the show today with the very latest going on right now in the National Football League, and that is the offseason. So we're going to have extensions being signed. We're also going to have free agent contracts being signed. And it looks like Mike Evans' tenure will continue with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As ESPN reported, they reached a new agreement, 2 years, $52 million for Evans with $35 million guaranteed. So the good news for Evans is he gets paid, gets guaranteed money, and potentially, who knows, may end his career where it started, which is very rare in this day and age in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, now let's move over to college hoops. The only story to talk about right now is the story of Caitlin Clark, who continues to break record after record. This time, now the all-time leading scorer in that game against Ohio State. She needed 18 points to pass Pistol Pete Maravich, who scored 3,667 points in 3 seasons. She did that in the first half, finished the game 35 points. Iowa beats Ohio State 93-83. So Caitlin Clark is the sports content story that continues to give us great news and great content every day here on NewsWire. Okay, speaking of sports content, we talk a lot of sports betting, as most of you know here on the show. Also just mentioned, as North Carolina is getting ready to launch next week as ahead of March Madness, we've got a new partnership here. And it looks like the first sports bets that you can actually place in North Carolina are through the Caesars Sportsbook. They made the announcement this morning. They're launching their sports betting with a partnership. So there's a little bit of a caveat here. They announced Friday that you can register for online sports betting, and they're already accepting wagers. But if North Carolina residents want to gamble using the online wagering platform, they have to be on the tribal lands of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. So that's the deal there. But needless to say, sports betting is sort of started in North Carolina, even ahead of that March 11th date. Okay, the other piece of breaking news that we got this morning was courtesy of The Athletic. Zach Wheeler, new contract with the Philadelphia Phillies. How about this extension? 3-year deal, $126 million, $42 million AAV. That's the most lucrative extension based on yearly value in baseball history. Locks him up through 2027. They signed Aaron Nola in the offseason, so they got their 1 and they got their 2 ready to go for the future. The Giants signed Matt Chapman over the weekend, 3 years, $54 million, $2 million signing bonus, has some opt-outs as well. That does mean Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, the 2 remaining big signings, unless you consider JD Martinez. He's out there as well. This is a good story today, but it was not a good story over the weekend. Nationals prospect, his name is Dalen Lyle. He's out of the hospital. On Saturday, he was pursuing a ball hit by Tyler Miller deep to right field the 7th inning. He jumped up against the wall, extended his glove, and boy, he just looked like he made a head-first collision into the bullpen. You couldn't see what happened there, but the good news is he was released from the hospital, according to his manager, Davey Martinez, Washington Nationals there. Okay, sigh of relief. Justin Verlander looks closer to a return, a 60-pitch session in West Palm Beach on Sunday morning. No word on when he'll get in spring games. Clearly, the season starts on the 28th of March, so if he's going to pitch that first time around through the rotation, my guess he's got to make a start this week. But we'll see. 60 pitches, not a lot yet. That's just a bullpen session. Okay, the NIL investigation with the NCAA continues to take another turn. This time, it's a pausing of this investigation. Hard to keep up with this. After the events last week with the ongoing antitrust lawsuit, Charlie Baker, the head of the NCAA, in a memo said there'll be a pausing and no more beginning of investigations related to NIL. So here we go, back and forth. Did you see Xavier Worthy over the weekend? If you're watching the NFL Combine, if you didn't look quick, you would have missed it. The fastest 40-yard dash ever at the Combine, 4.21. I'm guessing in like 5 years, they're going to be under 4, right? Like this just continues to get the players get faster and faster. 4.21 is the Combine record according to the NFL. UConn wins the Big East title regular season for the first time since 1999. They're a rock-solid number 1 seed going into the NCAA tournament. Unless something completely falls flat, they'll probably be the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, but still some games to play. You never know, but they're going to be a 1 seed for sure. Also, number 7, Kansas, looking for one of the top seeds, took a big hit as they lost to number 18, Baylor, over the weekend, 82-74. Kansas drops to 5th in the Big 12, and they lost 8 games on the season and lost 7 games on the road. Kind of bizarre. Going to have to play a lot of road games, of course, for the tournament as well. All right, Boston Celtics, what a season they're having, especially at home. They're the first team now in NBA history to win 3 games by 50 points in a single season. They beat the Warriors. That's right, the Warriors, 140-88 on Sunday. Jalen Brunson for the New York Knicks, hold your breath, injured his knee in the first quarter against Cleveland. The Knicks won the game, 107-98. X-rays negative after the game. We'll see if he ends up playing on Tuesday. That is the Knicks' next game. Yusuf Nurkic, how about this number? 31 rebounds. Set the Suns franchise record over the weekend. The most in an NBA game in 13 years. 31 rebounds for an NBA player. How about that? Oklahoma City Thunder, they continue to climb up in the standings. They're now first in the West. They leapfrog the Nuggets and the Timberwolves as of late. Speaking of the Knicks and speaking of Jalen Brunson, it's a huge potential injury if Brunson's out for any extended period of time. And our very own Coach Young talked about how much he means to the Knicks.
We'll see what happens here with Brunson. It appears to be, I guess, some good news. But if he's got to miss any more games, the chance of the Knicks doing what you just watched again last night, what kind of percentage would you give him if he's got to miss a few games here?
Well, it all lines up, Joe, into the schedule that New York Knicks play. I think the next game they have is Tuesday versus Atlanta, and so it's Tuesday and then it's Friday. So maybe he misses a game. It's a knee contusion, but knees are tricky, Joe. And I think, they run the risk of really kind of going themselves into the play-in tournament because that East is really jumbled right now between spots, I would say 4 through 8. Now, what the thing is good about New York is, and I don't know if this can help them in the playoffs, is you're playing without 4 starters, right? You're playing without Brunson. Obviously, Randall's working its way back. Mitchell Robinson, that's going to be more of a conditioning thing, and OG Anunoby. If the Knicks get healthy, they become very dangerous in the Eastern Conference. Maybe not as good as Milwaukee, who's playing really well right now, but you obviously know it's Boston, then it's a pecking order. Maybe you put Milwaukee and New York together, and then that next group of Miami, Indiana, Cleveland, right underneath that.
All right, that's Coach Young. Of course, you can see him all over the SportsGrid network. Where will we see Jason Kelce next, on the football field or somewhere else? He'll make a decision on his future at a press conference later today. L'Jarius Sneed is getting the franchise tag from the Chiefs. Carlos Alcaraz defeated Rafael Nadal in the Netflix Slam over the weekend, live broadcasting, streaming on Netflix. And Austin Eckroat ends up winning the Cognizant Classic. He won it this morning. They had to play an extra round to finish the day. We'll be right back.
The Lakers lose by double digits last night on the road in Phoenix against the Suns. The Suns get their first victory following the All-Star break, winning by 10 in covering.
Anthony Davis played 42 minutes in that game. LeBron James played 37 minutes in a loss. This is the same thing. It's like repeating this over and over and over. Sure, do you want to win these basketball games? Yes, but you sort of say to yourself, all right, at what cost do we have?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Guess what? Rock fight alert. Rock fight alert. Look at this Missouri-Tennessee score at the under 16. 1-0 Missouri. What is that?
Watched the entire Penguin game on Sunday. Been watching a lot of their games. I feel like we're seeing the end of the empire. There's talk of them maybe trading some big names.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
Sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Kyle Irving is in the house to talk about the experience of watching another record-breaking performance from LeBron James over the weekend, and we'll also preview some games in the NBA tonight. Kyle, great to have you back here on this Monday edition of NewsWire. Saturday night, it had all the fanfare. It's rare that a record's going to be broken. You get to watch it live, and that indeed was the case on Saturday night as LeBron James gets to 40,000 career points. I guess the question that I would have for you, Kyle, in watching the NBA and watching everything that's transpired, and look, when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played, I was old enough to remember when he was breaking all the records, and I said, no one ever is going to break this guy's record. He's played like 26 years or something in the NBA, and here we are. So I'll throw it back at you again. Is there another LeBron James in our lifetime, in our future, to hit 40,000?
The thing that's crazy is that right now, the person who might have the best chance of breaking LeBron's record probably isn't born yet. I mean, even someone like Luka Doncic would have to be doing what he's doing at this level for another 15-something years in order to achieve that. I saw a crazy stat over the weekend that helps put LeBron's scoring record into perspective. If a player averaged 24 points per game and played all 82 games in a season for 20 seasons, that doesn't even get you to 40,000 points. You would fall short of that number. So, the sustained greatness of LeBron James cannot be taken for granted. Another crazy thing to put into perspective, he has more points than Magic Johnson and Larry Bird combined. I mean, this guy continues to set the bar and raise it higher and higher, and he's still averaging 27 points per game, at age 39 in his 21st season. He doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, and there's no reason to believe that he can't push this record to 43,000, 44,000 points if he continues to play at this level. So, it's really hard not to take this guy for granted because we've gotten so used to seeing him on our TV screens for so long. But, this is really unprecedented stuff that we're seeing from LeBron James. And I wonder how much longer we're going to say that Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it feels like a couple more years to me, Kyle. But, they keep losing in some of these big games. They lost in the ring ceremony game. They lost when they revealed the Kobe Bryant statue. They lost in the game where LeBron get 40,000. So, I mean, in the end, LeBron is not a one-man show. I mean, they have other players there, AD specifically, but you would like to see, 2 or 3 other players play with LeBron and succeed. I guess we sort of yearn for those days in Miami when he had those stars next to him, but having one is better than none, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, LeBron is doing a ton. I mean, he's leading the team in scoring after the All-Star break. He has not had a ton of help. Anthony Davis is doing what he can, but the guys outside of those two are not doing a ton for the Lakers. I mean, I look at someone like Spencer Dinwiddie, who they brought in on the buyout market after the trade deadline, and he was supposed to make an impact. Darvin Ham has inserted him into the 6-man role. He's played the 6th most minutes on the team since he's been there, and he's averaging less than 5 points per game since the All-Star break. So, Austin Reeves had a pretty good game the other night. Different guys have stepped up, Rui Hachimura, to, help contribute towards LeBron and AD, but nobody's done it consistently. And my biggest concern with the Lakers right now is that they have the 3rd worst defense in the NBA since the All-Star break. And I know that's only 6 games, but, that's a concerning sign. This is a team that was a top 5 defense the entire season when they won the championship in 2020. And that's the level that they have to aspire to get back to if they're going to have a chance to, make another run, because, as we saw, the Nuggets have their number. They've beat them 8 times in a row dating back to last regular season. They swept them in the playoffs last year, and they got them all 3 times this season. So, Nikola Jokic seems to really like playing against the Lakers. Jamal Murray seems to really like playing against the Lakers. They were not shy to admit that they were really happy to spoil, LeBron's big night on Saturday. And, if the Lakers are going to get back to that top contender tier level, they're going to have to do it on the defensive end.
Yeah, and they'll have to beat a really good team tonight in Oklahoma City. They are 1-point favorites right now over the Thunder, who are surging toward the playoffs, total of 238.5. The one thing about the Lakers, though, Kyle, is that they do seem to bounce back after these tough losses. Do you think that'll be the case tonight?
You know what? I mean, this is kind of a tricky spread because the Thunder coming off a back-to-back, and they played a really tough, hard-fought game against the Suns last night where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander once again put forth an MVP-caliber performance. And, I would normally tend to lean with the Lakers on a game like this because I do agree with you that they bounce back really well. But OKC also really gets up for these games against the Lakers. Like you said, they were the ones that spoiled LeBron James' night where he broke the NBA's all-time scoring record last season. And they're trying to make a statement right now, too, as they hold down the number 1 spot in the Western Conference and prove to everybody that they belong in that contender tier, with teams like the Nuggets, with teams like, whether it's Denver or the LA Clippers or whoever's getting all the attention in the Western Conference, the Thunder are trying to make a point that they are also right there. And I think this is the type of game where they can make that statement.
Yeah, I do too. All right, should be a good game tonight. Let's go over now to the Western Conference odds and take a look at the favorite. It is still the Denver Nuggets. They're plus 190. The Clippers have moved up to plus 240 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook, followed by OKC at 8-1. Phoenix is in the conversation at 9-1. Minnesota plus 950. Dallas, Kyle, is 17-1. Oklahoma City is the fun pick. I know a lot of folks seem to be thinking that that's the long shot one to throw a dart at. Do you feel that way, or is this Jokic's world again, and we're just living in it, as they say?
I really do think it is Jokic's world, and we're just living in it. I mean, we're seeing this guy flip a switch in a way that, you don't really see very commonly from superstar players. Like, he has really just turned it on after the All-Star break, and they've won 6 straight, and they're making a point to prove that they're the defending champions for a reason. I do think that they are going to end up representing the Western Conference in the finals. But if you're looking for kind of a longer pick, I do like OKC. But another team I'm looking at is the Minnesota Timberwolves, just because they're one of the few teams in the Western Conference that have the size to defend Nikola Jokic. They can throw different bodies at him, whether it's Rudy Gobert, who I know has had some struggles defending Nikola Jokic, in big games in the past. But, whether it's Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, Naz Reid, they have guys that they can throw big bodies and use fouls to try and throw Jokic off his game. And, at the odds that you'd get them at, I feel like that's a pretty decent long shot if you're looking to go against someone other than the teams at the top of the table there.
All right, now in the East, what's really interesting is we have a pretty heavy favorite to win, and we probably should because Boston's playing as good as they've played in years, especially at home. They're minus 125 to win the East in FanDuel Sportsbook. And, Kyle, it's really hard to convince me to take a team that is, basically minus money at this stage. We haven't even got to April yet in the playoffs, but Boston's minus 125, Milwaukee plus 3-1, Cleveland plus 950. The Heat is lingering out there at 12-1. And now you have the Knicks at 17-1 and Philadelphia at 17-1. And Kyle, Philadelphia would be a lot shorter in terms of odds if we knew the status of Joel Embiid. And I guess that's the nature. Maybe that's a buy low opportunity there because if Embiid is back and playing well, I think he's in that, 6 to 8 to 10-1 range.
Yeah, I agree with you there. If Joel Embiid can come back and he's healthy playing on that, sore meniscus, they would be great long shot odds at plus 1,700 if he gets back to playing at the level that he was, which was MVP caliber. A lot of people had him as the MVP frontrunner at the time that he went down. But, I'm with you. Beating Boston is going to be really tough. We saw them dismantle the Warriors the other day. They're on an 11-game win streak. They're beating teams by an average of almost 20 points over that stretch. But, again, if we're going to talk long shot odds, if you want to kind of throw a dart out there of someone that's not the top team, the Miami Heat are lingering, like you said. I mean, they've won 8 out of their last 10, and their only 2 losses are to the Nuggets and the Celtics in that span. Jimmy Butler's starting to turn it on. Bam Adebayo is defending at as high of a level as anybody in the NBA. Guys are starting to get back and get healthy, and Terry Rozier, Tyler Herro should be coming back soon. This is a team that has plenty of playoff experience, and they've showed in the past that they are not afraid of anybody. And with injuries to guys like Joel Embiid, injuries to guys like Jalen Brunson, the Knicks are really banged up with OG Anunoby. It does kind of feel like, the stars are aligning for the Heat to potentially make another, I don't want to call it a surprise run because we've already seen them do it recently, but maybe somewhat of a surprise run given the fact that they haven't been one of those top teams in the Eastern Conference all year. So if you're looking for a long shot play in the East, I really think that the Miami Heat have as good of a chance as anybody if we're talking about who could knock off Boston.
Yeah, used to making those deep runs. They did it again last year, did it a couple of years ago in the bubble as well. All right, Kyle, great to see you and great to have you back here on NewsWire on this Monday. We'll catch up again soon.
Anytime, Craig. Thank you.
All right, that's Kyle Irving joining us here on the show. Coming up next, it's time for us to reach out to our friend Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report. We'll talk about the latest on sports betting in New York and also artificial intelligence, really interesting in sports betting. Don't go away.
The Lakers lose by double digits last night on the road in Phoenix against the Suns. The Suns get their first victory following the All-Star break, winning by 10 in covering.
Anthony Davis played 42 minutes in that game. LeBron James played 37 minutes in a loss. This is the same thing. It's like repeating this over and over and over. Sure, do you want to win these basketball games? Yes, but you sort of say to yourself, all right, at what cost do we have?
The early line, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This is
the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Guess what? Rock fight alert. Rock fight alert. Look at this Missouri-Tennessee score at the under 16. 1-0 Missouri. What is that?
Watched the entire Penguin game on Sunday. Been watching a lot of their games. I feel like we're seeing the end of the Empire. There's talk of them maybe trading some big names.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. It's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Matthew Waters is our guest contributor today from LegalSportsReport.com as we dive into the latest on sports betting going on, some new companies, new tech ideas as well. Let's dive right in. Matt, great to have you back here. Hope you had a good weekend.
Great weekend, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's start off here because this is, I think, a really cool story to read about over at Legal Sports Report because so many sports betting operators are all after the same thing, right? They all want your parlays, they all want your teasers, and they launch, they give you the promos. And look, one company that, let's be honest, is sort of behind as far as the leaders are concerned, that's Bally Bet. But Matt, what I found interesting about this article is they seem to be okay with that and carving out their own space for something different, which we think is going to become big in the future. Tell us more.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Craig. We're hitting the point now with sports betting being a mature product in a bunch of states, and really not many other states that we're looking at to expand. When you have sports betting in more than 36 states already, and then you're looking at companies that either want sports betting to be their product or they want to use sports betting as a tool. And we're finding that Bally Bet wants to use it more as a tool, as an acquisition tool, to get people into their iGaming online casinos. And that wasn't always the plan for Bally Bet. Bally Bet spent more than $3 billion, Craig, in building out their interactive segment. They bought a company that was listed in London called GameSys for more than $2 billion. They bought a tech provider for their sportsbook platform in the US. They bought a company called BetBull for a couple $100 million. And then last year, they scrapped it all. They wrote it off. They took the losses, and they said, now we're going to do this differently. So they went out and hired Kambi. We're familiar with Kambi. They've supplied a bunch of books in the U.S. They still supply BetRivers. BetRivers is another one of these companies that has more of the iGaming focus, and we now see that that's what Bally's is going to do too. Look, they finally realized that they just don't have the appetite to spend what it's going to take to carve out a meaningful sports betting share in the market. And, that's fine. That's how these smaller companies exist, right? They understand that they're not going to beat DraftKings, FanDuel, and they're going to have to do something a little different. Interesting because Kambi, their earnings call earlier last month, actually, they said, we're not sure what's going on with Bally Bet. We hope to see them marketing more. We hope to see them start to, ramp up the pace and really get the sports betting business going. And then on Bally's earnings call, they said, no, we are going to take a measured approach to marketing. We are not going to spend a lot of dollars on marketing because we are really focused on iGaming here. And so that's the big story for now. Look, they are even holding off on launching in Massachusetts for over a year now, right? Because they want to see what's going on with iGaming. They wouldn't even address anything else until they got iGaming live in Rhode Island. When you think about how small of a state that is, how much is that really going to move the market? But the needle, excuse me. But it's all about iGaming at this point for a bunch of different companies, and Bally Bet is turning into one of them. They have two really interesting licenses, Craig. The first is Massachusetts, and the Massachusetts gaming regulators are saying, look, we want to know what's going on here. We've been live for over a year. You're not here. The other one is New York. Now, we just saw that Wynn, who was one of these companies that has decided to pull out, they sold to Penn for $25 million, their New York license. And that's what the license costs, $25 million. Bally Bet is not interested in monetizing that yet. It's because they want to see what's going to happen in New York with iGaming. So there's a lot of moving parts for Bally's right now. Bally's used to be a company called Twin River. They owned a couple of regional casinos, and they were a nice little stock for people to invest in and see nice returns. Now there's something much bigger. They have a lot more on their plate, and the interactive side just wasn't worth the focus, the attention, the man hours, and the dollars that they were spending on it. So we have another company now who, Bally Bet is a recognizable name, but they're kind of taking the backseat in sports betting, and they're saying, well, let's use it to cheaply acquire customers for online gaming. We'll cross-sell, and we'll just see where the chips lie then. I expect that if New York decides not to go with iGaming, or, when the iGaming licensing comes out, and if Bally Bet doesn't get one, then they're going to monetize that sports betting license and sell it to somebody who is going to care about a sports betting product. But for right now, we're watching Bally Bet kind of shift into their iGaming routine, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, a little bit of a roll of the dice, I would say, for Bally Bet on this one, but we'll see. It could end up working out again if New York legalizes that and pushes that through. Well, the other dynamic that we've seen over, let's say, the last couple of years, Matt, is the popularity of artificial intelligence. Apps like ChatGPT all over the place, and it was only inevitable before it moved its way over to sports, and AI basically running simulations of games like Madden and some others. I mean, the idea of betting on this stuff, I guess, sounds crazy initially. And then when you think about it, if it's secure, maybe it does make some sense. And there's a company that is sort of spearheading this.
Yeah, there are a couple of virtual sports companies out there. Inspired is one of them that does a really good job. They have a really interesting product. And Craig, you're exactly right. You have to liken it to those early days in the pandemic when there were no sports on TV and everybody was like, oh, well, what are we going to bet on? And then people started simulating Madden and betting on that. And it is a much more refined and intelligent product than that, right? Instead of a basketball game that goes for 48 minutes or a football game that goes for 60, we're going to chop those down to maybe 5-10 minutes. And it could be based on a bunch of things. It could be based on, completely fake athletes and, fake statistics and what have you. Or it could be based off NFL alumni, which Inspired has a deal with. And now they have signed a deal with the NBA and the NFL. And so they said on their earnings call, look, this is probably put up or shut up time when it comes to virtual sports in the US. Other markets have seen virtual sports be a fantastic complement to an actual sports betting product. Those soccer matches are long. You're looking at 90 minutes, maybe 120 if it goes into extras. People are looking for something to do during that. And virtual sports has been nice to keep the money rolling while you're waiting for other bets to pay out. We haven't seen it take on too much in America, but Inspired is hoping that with trademarks like the NBA and the NFL, they really hope that this is going to start to catch on. Now, BetMGM and BetRivers have both agreed to take on these virtual products, and we're going to see the NFL game roll out sometime in the first half of this year. That's really interesting to me. We all know that bettors love football, but are they going to love it enough to bet on a virtual product? I just don't know, and I think it's interesting that Inspired is saying, look, we just don't know. Clearly, what has happened in European markets hasn't translated as quickly into the U.S. market as we've seen now. They did mention that Ontario is doing well with sports betting. And so when you look at the whole North American side of it, they're hoping that there can be a catch on there. But it's just going to be one of those things where, I have often said that online betting is the best way to go. And the numbers show that too. 90% of handle in most places goes online. This virtual sports to me seems like something that could be fun in a sports bar experience at an actual sports book where you have multiple people watching the games and, getting excited over the outcomes and every little thing that happens. I don't know if I enjoy betting on NFL games. I don't know if I personally am going to enjoy sitting in my basement, having a movie on the TV and second screening a virtual football game that I'm betting on. So I don't know just how big this can get in the US, but I think it's telling that Inspired is saying, look, it's gotta be this year. Something has to turn, something has to happen, or maybe we'll just go back to focusing on the European companies. And it's not like the companies in the US are unfamiliar with this product. If you've ever been to a gaming conference, particularly G2E out in Las Vegas, it's where all the gaming companies go. And Inspired always has a magnificent booth showing off their games. It looks like the best video game you've seen. And it's honestly, in my perspective, it is a really cool product. I just don't know how it fleshes out into a significant portion of sports betting.
Yeah, when without humans involved, like iGaming, it seems like a tough sell. At least people, sort of betting on the talent of the humans. Here in this case, you're betting on the talent of artificial intelligence, which you really don't know. People like to have an edge, basically, Matt. You don't have any edge when you have no idea who's participating. All right, finally, let's get to this quick. We got about a minute to go. Athletes in Canada, Wayne Gretzky, Connor McDavid, no longer can be part of these sports betting ads. Why did this go into effect, and when does it go into effect?
Well, it went into effect on February 28th, so it is now effective. The rules came out last August. And look, everybody is worried about the influence that celebrities, athletes, what have you, will have on bettors, especially on children who are not yet betting. You see kids saying, I would bet at this sports book. I would bet at that sports book because they have this guy or that guy. Now, what's interesting is there is technically a carve out that will still let these athletes and celebrities appear in sportsbook ads, but it's only if those ads are slanted toward responsible gaming. So you could still have a Connor McDavid saying, hey, bet responsibly on TV in Ontario, right, and that's totally fine. What you can't do is say, hey, come and bet with us. So it's a fine line, but it is a line, and hopefully they start to see that is improving responsible gambling in Ontario.
All right. Well, we'll see if it happens here in the U.S. No word on that future. Thanks again, Matt, for coming here on NewsWire. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, sir. You too.
All right, coming up next, we give a preview of the season on the New York Mets with Tim Healey. Don't go away.
The Lakers lose by double digits last night on the road in Phoenix against the Suns. The Suns get their first victory following the All-Star break, winning by 10 in covering.
Anthony Davis played 42 minutes in that game. LeBron James played 37 minutes in a loss. This is the same thing. It's like repeating this over and over and over. Sure, do you want to win these basketball games? Yes, but you sort of say to yourself, all right, at what cost do we have?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Guess what? Rock fight alert. Rock fight alert. Look at this Missouri-Tennessee score at the under 16. 1-0 Missouri. What is that?
Watched the entire Penguin game on Sunday. Been watching a lot of their games. I feel like we're seeing the end of the empire. There's talk of them maybe trading some big names.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The Early Line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
sort
Night.
Of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Newswire. The most dominant force right now in the National Basketball Association is, of course, the Boston Celtics, winning virtually every home game and winning by 50 points or more each and every day. Our very own Coach Young, of course, all over SportsGrid this weekend, talking about how dominant the Celtics have been.
Think about this game, folks, yesterday. The Celtics shoot 51% from three, right? They hit 18 more threes than a team with the Splash Brothers, right? So you think about that, right? 18 threes, that is plus, if I'm doing it quickly, 54 points from the three-point line. If you beat a team by 54 points from the three-point line, you're not losing. I mean, let's just be honest. You're not losing. And to me, Steve Kerr went with a small ball lineup of trying to go with Dre at the 5 and went with 4 guards, and it completely backfired on them. Completely. Because they couldn't guard anybody. It didn't matter who they guarded. And they all got busy. So to me, it's really a testament of how good Boston is. But as great as they are, and you've seen this, Donnie, right? And Joe, they have those games when Tatum will give you a 4 for 16, where Jaylen Brown can't go left. Maybe Porzingis, who didn't play. That's an amazing thing. Porzingis didn't play. Porzingis gets hurt. Father Time gets up with Al Horford. So to me, they are rightly placed as a favorite to win the title. I do think it's a little bit of disrespect towards the defending champions that the margin is so wide between them, and meaning Denver, and the Boston Celtics.
All right, thanks very much, Coach Young. Now let's head out to Port St. Lucie, Florida, where the New York Mets, of course, have spring training going on for the next few weeks. Tim Healey's already been in Florida covering them for Newsday for quite some time. But, Tim, better to be in Florida than New York right now, right? I mean, the weather actually in Florida hasn't been all that great over the last couple of days. But generally speaking, I would say an advantage. Advantage you.
It's good to have a short winter and head down in early February for spring training. I'm very comfortable with that arrangement. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Florida fan in the world, but this time of the year, it's acceptable for you to say that it's okay. Okay, so look, it's definitely a different camp for the Mets this year. The expectations have changed significantly after the crazy spending last year with Scherzer and Verlander and everyone else. But I guess with the Mets, the peculiar part about this is that it seems like every spring we have these like injuries to talk about and start off with. Like you never want to go there, but here we are again. And Kodai Senga, who I thought was fantastic last year, by the way, 200 strikeouts, could front any rotation. We found out a couple of weeks ago that he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. When is like the next update coming on him? Is it not going to be for a few weeks?
The next update actually could be as soon as this week. I do plan to inquire because the Mets said when he got his PRP injection about a little over a week ago that the first 10 days are going to tell them a lot about how his recovery is going to go. And we're approaching that 10-day mark already. They did say he's not going to throw for 3 weeks, which then will be followed by 6 weeks of his own spring training of sorts. So he's a ways away. He's not going to come back until May at the early, but we might get some new information this week.
All right. So now the other player to ask you about is Jeff McNeil, because as I've watched a lot of these spring games and been there in person, I saw Brandon Nimmo play the other day. I've seen Brett Beatty play, Alvarez, Pete Alonso, and Lindor came over to Jupiter twice. What's going on with Jeff McNeil? How long has he had this injury that he has? Is this something that happened to him recently? What did I miss here? Because I guess I should have followed this a little bit closer. What's the deal with him?
He was swinging the other day against Edwin Diaz, went into the cage to take some more swings, according to the Mets, and then felt something in his biceps, his left biceps. They shut him down for a few days and plan to reevaluate on Tuesday, tomorrow, the day after the Mets off day. So, again, I think we'll know more then. They have not even sent him for an MRI yet. They don't believe it to be a big deal. We'll see. The Mets a lot of times through the years have thought things to be not a big deal, and then they learn more. What's interesting about McNeil's biceps injury is that it's on the same arm where he had a torn UCL at the end of last season. Left elbow at the end of last year, left biceps now. say they don't think they're related, but you look at the arm and there's the elbow and there's the bicep, and you can't help but wonder if instability in one area is leading to trouble with another. So there's a lot to be learned. I'm not ready to say yet that McNeil's status is in doubt for that opening day, but over the next couple days, I think we'll know a lot more.
Yeah, and such an important player to the Mets. I remember when they shut him down at the end of last year as well. Now, there is good news. Edwin Diaz is going to be back pitching in spring games pretty soon, it feels like here. And I understand that, look, part of this is making sure he's ready for the regular season, Tim. The Mets cannot go another year without Edwin Diaz pitching, although Robertson did a really nice job when he was there filling in. But Diaz is like one of those elite guys. And when you're not going to score as many runs and your pitching isn't going to be as good, you need a guy like this. And so I think that caution is probably the best operation for the Mets right now.
And caution is really how they've done this. They were considering bringing him back at the end of last season, but then decided it just wasn't worth it. So now here we are, early March. Next week, I believe, is the 1-year anniversary of him suffering that major knee injury at the WBC, celebrating that win on the field with Team Puerto Rico. Tuesday, Edwin Diaz is going to pitch in a minor league game. That would mean the next step is for him to pitch in a Grapefruit League game, which I would think would be Friday or Saturday maybe. So he's getting close. They've been very careful, but he's cleared all his benchmarks. He faced hitters in live batting. He fielded bunts and covered first base during pitchers fielding practice, which was a big, big step for him, getting around on that knee. So he's getting closer. The Mets have been very cautious because they absolutely know what you said, that he is the bullpen. He was amazing in 2022. Without him last year, things looked a lot different, as good as David Robertson was for a while there. So they know they need Edwin Diaz if they're going to even sniff a wild card race this year.
Yeah, and another player that the Mets will need long-term, I think, is Pete Alonso, who says the right things, does the right things. Just an incredible guy, honestly, Tim. It seems like he's always available for you guys, always available for the fans. $20 million on a 1-year arbitration deal this year. I expect this. I mean, look, when you talk about faces of baseball, Tim, no one wants to say Pete Alonso. I mean, this guy participates in the home run derby every single year. He's a fun player to have around. But, you know, players like this don't age like others. I wonder what the Mets are going to end up doing here with Pete Alonso.
It's going to be interesting. And their near-term plan, at least, and I think Alonso's on his side and the Mets on their side seem to be in agreement on this. The near-term plan is to just let it play out. Let the season play out. Let Pete play his contract year and then see what happens in free agency. So that has really been the plan all offseason for the Mets. There haven't been any long-term contract negotiations between the sides. And on Alonso's side, it seems like free agency for years now has always been his goal. Raising that bar for basemen, for hitters, getting his own big payday, of course. So it is maybe the biggest individual storyline of the season going into the season for the Mets, but it's not one that is going to be resolved soon.
Yeah, a new manager too. New acquisitions for the Mets. A lot of departures really is the story, but the new acquisitions are going to play a big part. Mets did it much differently this year. Luis Severino, prove it to us. Sean Manaea, prove it to us. If one of them hits, Tim, I think it's a success, right? Like, that's what you do in baseball. You hope to hit 50%. G-Man Choi, I don't know how he factors in there. I know Harrison Bader, when he's healthy, elite defender and everyday player. But really, when we look at the Mets season, a lot of this now is going to come down to pitching. 3/5 of the rotation from last year, Verlander, Scherzer, Senga, not ready for the start of the season. So Severino and Manaea have to be a big part of this, right?
Yes, and you basically were exactly right. Those are upside plays by the Mets. Severino, Manaea, Bader, guys who have higher ceilings than they have shown in recent years. In a couple of cases, have not been able to stay on the field, have not been able to stay healthy. But if Bader can stay on the field, great defender, a little bit of a hitter. You can bat him ninth and take the defense and be happy with that. Luis Severino, we've seen in the past, not recently, but in the past, he can be a front line-ish starter, an all-star type of starter. And then Manaea made some improvements near the end of last year that the Mets basically are betting are for real. and he can do that on a full-time basis as a full-time starter, which he has not done or done well in quite some time now. So the days of the big spending Mets or the big ticket Mets took a pause this offseason. They didn't really like any of the guys who were looking for big contracts, aside from Yamamoto, who decided on the Dodgers instead of the Mets. So once that happened, they decided to spread the money around, fill all of their holes with more of those short-term, medium money type of contracts.
Last thing, Tim, I'm sure you've done sort of something like this already, and we still have a little bit less than a month to go. So I would ask you this, like, outside of those names, like the big names that we know, and you could throw in any of the younger guys too, who has been like the talk of camp, like the performer that the manager, the coaches just constantly seem to be talking about? And by the way, that could all change in a week. We're only a week in the spring training year. I understand that. But who are like the players that opening day starts on the 28th, things progress the way they are, we'll be talking about this or these guys this year?
For the first time in my now 7 seasons covering the Mets, they have a bunch of actually really interesting prospects in the upper levels of the minor leagues. On the position player side, that's Jet Williams, who is their number one prospect. Really fast, gets on base all the time, great control of the strike zone. And then the other guys are Drew Gilbert, who they got in the Verlander deal last summer, and Luis Angel Acuna, who they got in the Scherzer deal last summer. And then on the pitching side, they have Christian Scott, a University of Florida draft pick a couple of years ago. Their organizational pitcher of the year last season. So Christian Scott, Mike Vassell, and Dominic Hamel. So in big league camp, they kind of had these three hitter prospects, these 3 pitcher prospects, and any of those guys could factor into their 2024 Major League plans, if not immediately. They're still going to have to prove it in AA, AAA. They'll be opening at those levels. But the Mets, in all that they've been focusing on player development, Steve Cohen has said straight up that you can't build a team in free agency like he tried in the last couple of years. Player development's a focus for the Mets now, and we'll see if that starts to bear fruit over the next couple of months.
Okay. And look, people forget in the past they developed Wheeler, they developed Harvey, they developed DeGrom, they developed David Wright, they developed Jose Reyes. Like, I mean, this is how the Mets used to do it. Maybe that's the new way of going about it now. We'll see. Hey, Tim, always great to catch up with you, man. Have a great rest of your spring. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure I will see you this season. Thanks again for coming on.
Happy to, Craig. See you soon.
All right, Tim Healey covering the Mets for Newsday. We will take a brief pause here on the show as we wrap things up. A little bit of sad news here as one of the all-time legends from ESPN's reporting, Chris Mortensen, passed away. I'll give you my thoughts on that as we return next here on NewsWire. Don't go away.
The Lakers lose by double digits last night on the road in Phoenix against the Suns. The Suns get their first victory following the All-Star break, winning by 10 in covering.
Anthony Davis played 42 minutes in that game. LeBron James played 37 minutes in a loss. This is the same thing. It's like repeating this over and over and over. Sure, do you want to win these basketball games? Yes, but you sort of say to yourself, all right, at what cost do we have?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
This
is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that one year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Guess what? Rock fight alert. Rock fight alert. Look at this Missouri-Tennessee score at the under 16. 1-0 Missouri. What is that?
Watched the entire Penguin game on Sunday. Been watching a lot of their games. I feel like we're seeing the end of the empire. There's talk of them maybe trading some big names.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort of
night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. I try to always end the show on a positive note for those of you who have watched this show now for a couple of years. Unfortunately, got to end with a sad note today, but I'll try to be positive about it. Chris Mortensen passed away yesterday at the age of 72, longtime reporter for ESPN, 3 decades. He was 72 years old. And, I never was, very close with Chris Mortensen, but covering the NFL as I did for a long period of time, I had a chance to interview him several times at Radio Row at the Super Bowl. Always see him in South Florida when he would come in town and cover the Dolphins in Miami Gardens. And just generally speaking, such a nice man, such a nice human being who, by the way, would never turn down any requests to do interviews at that time. And also the other thing that I respect so much about Chris Mortensen is he was an insider at the time before social media, where you had to get your news out on television or in a newspaper. And really the way that the group of insiders has changed so much in the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball and hockey. Mortensen was one of the iconic starters in that industry as well, to get the news to the people before it came out to the public. It's long career for him, and certainly rest in peace, Chris Mortensen, and obviously our thoughts and prayers are with his family as well. All right, that will do it for our show today. Thanks to Tim Healey from Newsday for coming on, also Coach Young for his little clips as well, Kyle Irving covering the NBA, in addition to Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report. I'll be right back here tomorrow with another edition of NewsWire at 11 a.m. Eastern, so make sure you tune in as we get closer and closer to the conference championships and tournaments, which are coming up, and then the NCAA tournament, which we will have coverage here, of course, on SportsGrid as well. Also, a reminder for those of you getting ready for the fantasy season, the fantasy baseball season, myself and Davis Maddock, every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. Hopefully you can check out that show if fantasy baseball is your thing. If not, I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Also, don't forget, Scott Farrell, 3 o'clock Eastern, coast to coast today. He's back in the house here on a Monday. I'll be watching. Hope you will be too. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a great rest of your Monday. Remember, smarter to be on SportsGrid. Have a great day.